So welcome to the 2017 Bonitas Comrades online training seminar. Awesome to have you with us. Thanks for joining us this evening from wherever you are in the world. It's brilliant to have you with us, and yeah, thanks again for taking the time out to spend this evening with us, and hopefully we're going to finish talking before you finish listening, and we'll be able to answer a lot of your questions this evening. And just a massive thank you to Bonitas for making this series of online training seminars possible. So thank you very much to them as well. So just to run through some of the things that we're going to get through this evening. Who are we? Well, my name is Brad Brown, and I'm going to be facilitating things this evening. With me tonight, not physically with me, but on the other side of the country in Johannesburg, is Lindsay Parry. Lindsay, welcome to you. Thanks for joining us. Lindsay is the official Comrades Marathon coach. And yeah, the clock is ticking, Lindsay. Not long to go now.
How's it, Brad? Yeah, when you reminded me to send through the templates for the presentation tonight, I was like, I can't believe it. But we are literally 9 weeks out from Comrades, which basically means we've got 6 weeks left to train properly for it, and three weeks to taper. So if you ain't panicking yet, it's probably time to start.
I love that. As you said, 9 weeks, I just went cold. So yeah, 9 weeks is absolutely nothing. But lots to get through tonight. As always, we welcome comments and questions. Please pop them into the comments box in the software. I get tons of emails. We get tons of Facebook messages and tweets. I'm a typical guy. I can't do two things at once. I struggle to walk and chew gum at the same time. So if you've got any questions, please pop them into the software here, because I really struggle to multitask. And it happens every single time I get off this thing and I check Facebook or I check Twitter, and there's a ton of questions that we missed that people have tweeted or Facebooked throughout this thing. So please keep them in this platform. If you're watching the recording of this and you've got any questions, feel free to pop them onto social media, and I'll show you a little bit later on in tonight's presentation where you can get those questions done. So what are you going to learn tonight? That's the big question. We're going to chat about where you should be right now, what you're going to need to do for the next 4 weeks, how to, or basically getting through the last few hard weeks of training, why no more racing, and then Lindsay's also going to chat about the long run. So those are the points we want to get through. Not too much to get through from telling you what you should and shouldn't be doing, but we are going to open the floor, and I'm sure we are going to have lots of questions because I see there are quite a few coming through already. So Lindsay, I think let's jump straight into it. Let's not waste any time, and let's talk about where people should be right now in their training.
Yeah, well, we're moving into April. Always going around the country doing road shows, busy doing the novice seminars at the moment, and really I call March and April Comrade season. Those are the main weeks of training. And now moving into April, you really are in the midst of your peak. Your biggest weeks of training will come in April and slide into the first week of May. But yeah, you can expect to be quite tired at the moment. It's starting to get a bit dark. But really right now, that's what Comrades is all about, is yeah, now it's really all about now and doing the work now, so that on the day you are prepared to do what you need to do. That really does mean that the focus is on getting kilometers, and to a degree that means doing as many Ks as you can, but you do have to listen to your body. So there will be days where you really shouldn't be forcing the pace. You do have to remind yourself that at the end of the day, it's all about getting to the start line injury-free and healthy. And so sometimes less is more, and you do need to just keep an eye on how you're going. But provided you're recovering well, that things are going nicely, that you are recovering quite well, then now is the time where you will be doing your most training that you've ever done. So what does that mean for the different medals? And that's probably the best way to go through it, is just to let people know what you should be doing kind of nowish for the next 4 weeks, and I don't want to go into too much detail because I always do that. I jump ahead and jump into the next four weeks. But yeah, and just in terms of kilometers, to wrap this one up so that I don't end up saying the same thing twice just now, is that silver wise, depending on how silver you're going, but if you're looking at dipping under, say, 7:15 to 7:30, you're probably running now in the region of 120 to 140 Ks. If you're looking to go about 7 hours, you're looking at a little bit more, maybe 10, 15 Ks a week more. And if you're looking to go under 7 and getting closer to 6.5 hours, you're probably looking in the region of 150, 60, 70 Ks a week. Your Bill Rowans, you're looking around 100 to 120 at most, but probably 100 Ks a week is looking good. Your bronze medalist, you're looking in around the region of about 75 to 80 Ks, and your finishers, you're looking, depending again a little bit on experience and when you started your build up, but you're probably looking at somewhere in the region of 55 to 70, maybe just over 70 Ks a week. And there'll be 1 or 2 bigger weeks than that, when we do a marathon or when we do an ultra, which is probably going to be on everybody's agenda this month, then that week's obviously going to be a bit bigger. But yeah, that gives you an idea of where you should be now: fit, strong, healthy, hopefully injury free, and really doing the bulk of your training now.
Fantastic. All right, Lindsay, we are getting lots of questions in, and I'm going to filter. So if you've asked a question, I'm just going to go through them and sort of talk a little bit about some of the questions, but I know we're going to cover some of the stuff later on. So if you've asked a question and we don't get it now, let's talk, or we'll save those questions for a little bit later. So question in from Marius. Lindsay, Marius says, during Comrades 2016, the down run, I suffered quite a bit with both knees the last 25 odd kilometers. I'm currently becoming aware of them again, but only slightly. Any specific strength training I should be doing or avoiding at this stage?
Yeah, so look, I would be avoiding doing too much eccentric work in the gym, or doing running that involves long, steep downhill running. And then in the gym, the things that you can do to help the knees are to do step-ups onto a low bench at first, and then perhaps working up to a higher bench later on. Some single leg 30-degree squats, so we don't need to do deep knee squats, and maybe some single leg presses. Those are the type of exercises I'd be doing. I'd also just go and make sure that the shoes aren't reaching the end of their life, because pain, particularly right on the front of the patella or the kneecap, can often be a case of your shoes really getting to the end of their lifespan. The good news, of course, is that although there's still a lot of downhill in the second half of the up run, none of it is as savage as the downs on the down run. So on the actual day, your knees shouldn't take nearly as much of a pounding as they did on the down Comrades.
All right, fantastic. Lindsay, question in from Doe, and in a nutshell, I was asking about pacing for somebody who wants to finish, and he's talking about average pace. What would the average pace be for someone who wants to just finish, not particularly, they just want to dip in under 12 hours? Average
it's
pace
going to be close to 8 minutes a K, possibly a touch quicker, because you are going to be doing loads of walking. I mean, if you're looking just to finish this race, you really should be doing tons and tons of walking and keeping those legs as fresh as you possibly can. So, in terms of what is the official pace to get across the finish line, it's 8:18. But of course, if you're looking to just finish and you don't have a CC, charity seating, and you're starting right at the back, you are going to lose, let's really go worst case scenario and say that you're going to lose 12 minutes, which will mean that already brings your average pace down to, I'll work it out quickly, 8 minutes and 10 seconds. So, when you are actually physically running, if you say you're running at around 755 as an average, then with loads of walking, particularly on the climbs. I mean, I would literally run to a pole, walk to a pole, run to a pole, that sort of strategy. So that'll probably pull your average back to about 8 to 805 per kilometer. And again, taking into account that the second half is a whole lot easier than the first half, then as you fatigue, you should still be able to maintain that steady, consistent pace, taking into account that whenever you run, you're probably going to run quicker than that because there are a lot of downhills, but then again, you're also going to increase the frequency of the walking, so it'll pull that average back again to around about 7:55, 8 minutes per K.
All right, brilliant. Lindsay, question from Francisco. Francisco is saying, can I continue cycling long distances throughout Comrades training, or should it be kept to a minimum? What's the best way to incorporate cycling into Comrades training?
Look, if you've always done cycling and you are cycling up to now, then absolutely you can incorporate quite long periods of training. And I'd really let my body guide me on that. You are in your peak training now, and certainly you're running more than you possibly would be accustomed to if you are, for example, a triathlete. But if you're still managing to ride 2 to 3 times a week, and one of those rides is a long 4-hour ride, and you're finding that from a running point of view, you're not feeling too bad the next day, and your cumulative fatigue, so in other words, week on week, you're not just digging yourself into a bigger and bigger hole, then by all means keep going, because it's going to make a huge difference to your cardiovascular fitness by doing lots of cycling. And I also find that while cyclists tend to not be great runners, runners who do cycling tend to be very strong on the hills. And so cycling is a really good form of cross-training for the up comrades. You just have to figure out what the balance is for you. So you may need to cut back a little bit on the cycling now in April, and I would certainly look to start cutting it back quite significantly from 3 weeks out, and I would do very little or no cycling in the last 10 days.
Okay, questioning from Franklin, and I think it is brilliant, particularly for this time of the year, and particularly for the guys and girls in the Southern Hemisphere training for Comrades. How do you build up your immunity during increased mileage? Obviously, it's starting to get a little bit chillier as well, and people tend to start getting sick. Lindsay, making sure you don't get sick at this stage in your training?
Yeah, look, there are obviously a couple of things that we can do which are all common sense, and things that people would tend to do anyway as they go into the winter period, but that we just need to be a little bit more anal about. So I need to actually write these studies down, but I was reading a study not so long ago, just 6 or 7 weeks ago, that was talking about how added vitamin C dosing doesn't really do much in the general population, but in people that are exercising really hard, it does make quite a significant difference to immunity. So certainly taking your 500 to 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C a day, taking a good multivitamin, making sure that you are eating healthy, making sure that you're getting maybe not enough sleep, but that you're getting the best sleep that you can possibly get, particularly now over these next 6 weeks. And that's not really a long time for somebody to really focus on getting into bed as early as they can and getting as good a quality sleep as they can by removing cell phones from the bedroom, stopping screen time for 30 to 40 minutes before you climb into bed. Those are all things that will help to actually fortify your immune system. And then in terms of avoiding actually getting sick, you don't want to get a cold chest after exercise. So, as soon as you've finished exercising, get on a warm top, a dry and then a warm top. So don't put your tracksuit top on over your wet, sweaty shirt, for example. Get on a dry top, then you put on your tracksuit top. Get out of the cold, back into the warm, into a shower as quickly as you can afterwards. Avoid sick people as far as you can. Obviously, if you've got sick children, that becomes a problem. But I must admit that in my experience with my own kids, I do find that the sort of illnesses kids tend to get, we should be able to withstand most of those as long as we are looking after our immune system, i.e. enough sleep, eating healthy, getting the multivitamins. But yeah, at work, avoid sick colleagues. You know, if colleagues are sick, then definitely avoid shaking their hands. Avoid them after midnight at the office party. But yeah, those are sort of some of the common sense things that you can do to stay healthy.
Cool, cool. Let's talk about the next 4 weeks. We'll get to some more questions. There's lots of questions about racing and qualifying and that sort of thing. We'll get to those in a moment. But what should we be focusing on the next 4 weeks, Lindsay?
Yeah, so the next 4 weeks, as I've said, are crucial. It's all about maintaining that consistency. That's the golden word. I mean, we've been hopping on about that since the very first roadshow, webinar, whatever you call it. It's consistency, consistency, consistency. I've spoke about us chasing those kilometers, and I've given an idea of what those numbers mean in terms of the different medals. But it really comes down to recovery. And the better that we recover, the more able we are going to be to hit those targets that are in a training program or whatever goal that we've set ourselves. So make sure that you eat healthy. Make sure that you get that sleep that I've just been talking about in the previous slide. And I am going to once again have a whole slide on recovery. So I'll go into a lot more depth about how you can sleep better. But you know, what you do in the first half an hour after exercise, and in particular if you're doing a hill set or if you're doing a really long run, you know, anything, I consider anything over an hour and a half a long run, but you know, particularly those 2, 3, 4 hour training runs that we're going to be doing this month, in that first half an hour, really be anal about your recovery. Get in your chocolate milk or your recovery drink within an hour of exercise, you know, preferably sooner, but a lot of people can't eat straight away. Make sure that you're eating a really good, healthy meal with some good proteins to start repairing muscle damage. And very importantly, if you are, it's on the slide it says treat pain, but actually treat any symptom. So treat pain or any illness, get healthy quickly. Now I can't stress enough to people that if you have the sniffles or a head cold, you know, the chances of you getting better by flogging your body at 80 k's in the week, they're not good. Your chances are actually much better that you're going to get sicker. And even if you don't get sicker, you're going to take longer to get better. So just spend 48 to 72 hours getting yourself healthy again, and then plow on with the training. And when it comes to injury, that becomes even more important. You know, if you are feeling niggles, pains, you've got to treat those. I've said this before in the webinar, and I've certainly said it at every single roadshow that I've done this year, that 60% of the people that don't finish Comrades say, this is self-reported, it's not something that's made up, it's questionnaires that have gone out to people that don't finish. 60% of them started Comrades with an injury. So if you saw now, getting the Ks in because you're worried about not finishing is not going to help you get across the finish line. In fact, it's reducing your chances by almost 2/3 of getting to the finish line. So get treatment, get healthy, get injury free. And then finally, at the end of the next 4 weeks, that last week of April is the long run. Every Comrades runner's rite of passage to say that they have actually done the preparation and that they're ready to go on and do the big day. And I just want to make sure that I don't go into much more detail about the long run or if I must do it now. No, that is coming up again. So just suffice to say that is something you need to plan for now. Ideally, you want to do that for 75% of the field. So that's pretty much, actually I'm talking nonsense. For 90% of the field. That is 5 weeks before. Anybody who's running Comrades slower than 8 hours should be doing that run 5 weeks out. And then for the other 10%, the gold medalists, silver medalists, and those guys that are just missing out on silver, you can do that, or you should be doing that about 4 weeks out. And the reason for that is twofold. Number one, the number of Ks that have been run by that top 10% mean that their bodies are much better primed to be able to handle that mileage that late in the training program. And then secondly, and most importantly, they also are runners that recover and much quicker, and that is why they can handle the bigger training loads anyway. So they are going to recover much quicker, and that long run is going to be out of their system much quicker, and therefore 4 weeks out is the ideal. But for the bulk of the field, it's 5 weeks, so that you give yourself that psychological boost of being able to have run that distance. You let your body absorb it, but most importantly, you're no longer feeling the effects of the fatigue in your legs by the time you line up at Comrades.
Cool. Lindsay, lots of questions coming in about that long run and oceans and other ultras that are happening, and I'm not going to get to those questions. I think we can get into what you wanted to chat about in a mode, just because I think that'll answer a lot of them. But before we do that, a massive thank you once again to Bonitas for making this webinar possible, one of the official sponsors of the Comrades Marathon. So let's talk about recovery. First up, Lindsay, you mentioned the sort of treating pain, but recovery at this stage, when you're upping your mileage, is vital as well.
Yeah, so I mean, our three, and I'm going to add a little bit onto the slide anyway, but our three most important pillars of recovery are rest, sleep, and nutrition. Our rest and sleep can possibly be put into the same bracket, but rest really means that there are days in your week where you need to rest and recuperate and allow your body to improve itself, because that's really what recovery is all about. Recovery is the process that happens once we do training and damage our bodies. Our body then repairs that damage, but it doesn't just fix it back to the state that it was in before. It actually improves on it so that we can handle that load better the next time out. And this process continues week in, and that's why we tend to get stronger and stronger and stronger. And it's when we don't allow this recovery to happen that we actually go into a downward spiral, which either leads to us getting more and more and more tired and ultimately either sick and or injured. So we need rest days. For most people, except for the very tiniest percentage of elite runners in the world, we really need to have at least one full rest day. And you know, the more stressful your work and life pressures are, and the less talented you are in terms of a genetic gift for running, the more rest days you should have. And that is why, if you look at the Comrades programs on the website, you will note that for the finishers, for example, they have 3 rest days from running. Yes, we can fill in some cross-training on some of the days, but it's really important that there's at least one full day of rest where we don't do anything on that day in terms of exercise. And look, that for me is important. It's most important for the physical regeneration that takes place, but it's also important to have a day in the week where you are not trying to squeeze training in amongst everything else that we have to juggle in the day. So that rest day really is important. Sleep is crucial. You know, if we don't look after sleep and nutrition, then the last topic I'm going to talk about that's not on the slide is really wasting money. We need to first take care of sleep and our basic nutrition. I'm not even talking about recovery nutrition. I'm talking about our basic nutrition of eating healthily through the day. If we do not take care of those two things, then you can spend as much money as you want on shakes and powdered foods. It's only going to get you so far. So sleep. Let's unpack that a little bit. We don't all have the luxury of being able to get into bed at 9 o'clock every night or earlier if need be. We certainly don't have the luxury of sleeping in. Most of us have to get up at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning to make this Comrades dream happen. So that means that immediately the number of hours that we're going to sleep is compromised. And so when we are sleeping, it's really important that we try and have the best possible sleep that we can have. So I want to look at sleep in two avenues. The one is, how much sleep can we get? Okay, so I've already said now we've got 6 weeks of like really crunch training ahead of us before we move into the serious part of the taper. So over this period, even half an hour extra sleep is going to make a difference. So in this period, if you can get into bed that half an hour earlier, an hour earlier is a bonus. So whatever you can get, if you're normally a 4-hour a nighter, let's work towards 5. If you're a 6-hour a nighter, let's get towards 7. If you are an 8 hours a night person, well, you're lucky and that's great. Then at least you really are getting a good amount of sleep. And then let's look at Avenue 2, which is probably where most people fall in. The amount of sleep is never going to be ideal. If they get to 6 hours, that's really great. So how do we make sure that that quality of sleep is good? So one of the biggest disruptors of sleep is screen time, or getting SMSs or flashing lights from a TV or a cell phone in the bedroom where you're sleeping, particularly blue, but also red light. So those kind of things, you probably don't give two thoughts to it being in your bedroom, but in reality it's actually affecting your ability to go into the really deep sleep that we need for maximum recovery. So in short, 30 to 60 minutes before you go to bed, read a story, talk to your husband and wife, but stay off smartphones, tablets, TV, computer screen. Stay away from screen time as much as possible. And then the other very important bit is, when do we get into bed? Now, we have evolved as diurnal creatures, which means that we are typically awake during the day and we typically sleep at night. And our bodies have adapted hormonal release in response to that. So if we get into bed too late or stay awake for too long once it has gone dark, it affects our body's ability to release, in particular, growth hormone, and the growth hormone release then affects the release of testosterone. Both of those are very important in terms of recovery. And so the later you go to bed after 10 o'clock, the more compromised that testosterone and growth hormone release becomes, and therefore the more compromised your recovery. And if you're going to sleep after 12 o'clock at night, then you're seriously compromising your recovery. So aim to get into bed before 10 wherever possible, and those two things will then make a huge difference. And then finally, scratching on nutrition. As I said, it's about eating healthy. I'm not going to go into a massive description of what you should be eating. I think if we use common sense and we eat pretty healthily, we generally eat from the fresh section. So if you're going shopping and you're buying your groceries, if you're buying fresh meats, fresh vegetables, fresh fruits, you're not living out of boxes, cans, tins, then you're doing a pretty decent job on your nutrition. And once you've got those two things, the sleep and the nutrition, fairly good, then doing things like recovery shakes, massage in particular, compression socks, then these are all things that start to add to and complement your recovery. But if you don't get the sleep and nutrition right, well, you're getting close to wasting your money on all the others.
Awesome stuff. Brilliant. Lindsay, question in from Bridget on behalf of Joost, who's in the Netherlands. And Joost is asking, am I correct in assuming that Comrades does not work on brutto netto time for your finish time? And I'm gathering, Joost, you're asking about mat to mats or gun to gun. Lindsay, that's a big distinction. A lot of the big races internationally work on a mat to mat, but Comrades doesn't from a timing perspective.
Yeah, look, unfortunately, very few South African races do, which is what causes a lot of the angst and unhappiness with slow runners forcing their way to the front or getting there early so they can be in the front. And the typical argument, we all pay the same, therefore we have equal rights. But unfortunately, in South Africa, some of it, and certainly at Comrades, that is a factor. Some of it is a safety factor, and that is that we've got to get as many runners off the road before it gets dark as possible. And so that is part of the reason why it is mat to mat. Some of it is also traditional, and the other part of it is that part of the sort of TV viewing, if you like, for Comrades is also about that very dramatic cutoff that happens at 12 hours. So it's gun to mat. So that means that the time that you lose going from wherever it is that you line up in your seeding pen to crossing the start line, that is time that will be lost.
Okay, we're going to talk about racing in just a moment, but a question in from Samantha. Samantha's a novice, and I think this is something all novices struggle with, and even people who've done a few of these things, is the mental aspect of the self-doubt and not believing you can do it. What tips can you give Samantha on the belief side of things, Lindsay, like sort of talking yourself into that you can do this?
So for a start, you're definitely not on your own. Even quite fast runners, they'll set whatever target, and I know it's not quite the same because they at least can start the race knowing they're going to get a medal. But because the race is so far, a lot of people are in self-doubt. Can I get this done? So the important thing is that knowing that if you train consistently, that you will have a really great chance of finishing the race. I've spoken about the long run, which we're going to talk about in greater detail soon. And once you've done an ultra of 30 miles, 50, 55 Ks, you'll also realize that basically every time you step up to a new distance, yes, it's tough, but you always get to the end and you almost always feel like you can do more than what you've done. And so each piece of training that you do adds to this big puzzle. And when you get to the end of the Comrades training, that puzzle will be complete. And you'll be nervous, but you will have the confidence to know that you are capable and that you can finish Comrades. And on the day, there will be times of self-doubt again, because it is a really tough course. It is going to be quite warm, and it is a long way to go. But if you just keep with you this thought that you've just got to keep going, that every step is a step closer to the finish line, and whether you're running or walking, as long as every second of the day you are actually taking a step that gets you closer to Pietermaritzburg, then you really, almost the whole field has a really great chance of finishing the race.
Cool stuff. All right, Lindsay, let's talk about the no more racing and why it's important. And by no more racing, you don't mean don't do any more races. It means going out and smashing races.
Yes, and in particular, it means smashing 21 Ks and longer. But to be honest, at this stage, as we move in particular to the second week of April, racing gives a really high injury risk because you will invariably be racing on very tired legs. But what I'm really emphasizing here is the racing on marathons. So there are still people, and I'm getting loads of questions. I'm seeing it all over Facebook and Twitter. People are still talking about improving their seedings and going to this race to get whatever seeding. The reality is that the effort that most people need to jump up a seeding pen is huge. So if you ran a marathon and you did 4 hours 42, and you're thinking to yourself, yes, I just want to get into the 4:39, the effort that you need to get from that 4:42 to the 4:39 is probably going to be at least equivalent to the effort that got you to the 4:42. So you think about it when you did qualify, how stiff and sore were you the next day? And how compromised is the training going to be the following week if you don't injure yourself? And then ultimately what's going to happen, you're going to bump yourself from H until G. And when you're in G, all you're going to do is save yourself 2 minutes on race day. So you're going to get yourself 2 minutes closer to the start line, but how many weeks of training have you compromised? If you compromise 1 week of training, 2 weeks of training, how many minutes are those 2 to 3 weeks of compromised training going to cost you on race day? It's going to be more than 2 minutes. So you're much better off now in April making sure you recover properly from your training, making sure that you're getting in the Ks that you're supposed to be getting, building yourself a stronger body, because then on race day you can run a whole lot more than 2 minutes quicker. So I say it over and over and over again, and I don't think people really want to hear, but I would be really neglecting my responsibility if I didn't hammer this point home. Do not race any distances between now and Comrades if Comrades is your main goal. Now, if 2 Oceans is your main goal, or running a fast marathon is your main goal, well, then that's fine. But just know that when you go into it and you race those things, you are compromising what is possible for you at Comrades. And if you are in the 4-hour 30 plus marathon group, it becomes really important. Everything you do is going to impact on whether you get a finisher's medal or whether you don't get a finisher's medal. And so you really want to back off from racing, get the kilometers and the training in, and focus everything on Comrades race day.
Cool stuff. Yeah, fantastic. Lindsay, let's talk about that long run, because there's lots of questions coming through about that, when and sort of how. Obviously 2 Oceans coming up in just over a week from now as well. People asking a lot about that. Let's talk about the long run. You mentioned for 95% of the field, you're looking, I think you said 5 weeks out, the rest 4 weeks out. Let's talk about the long run in a bit more detail.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that you mentioned 2 Oceans, because that gives me another opportunity just to have a chat about it. But so for a start, how long should it be? Again, that's going to vary depending on the medal that you go for, or that you're training for. In my opinion, traditionally, and let me just unpack a little bit what I mean by traditionally. So Comrades is going, I think it's its 93rd or 94th running. I should check these facts before these webinars, but it's over 90 years old. Okay, in its up until the late 70s, they had early thousands of people running it. Okay, so to give you an example, I think the year I looked at, I mean, I stand to correction, but it was 1978 or 1979. There were just under 1,500 finishes of Comrades, and of those, there were well over 600, almost 800, if I recall correctly, that got silver medals. Okay, so back in the late 70s, almost half the field were good enough to run under 7.5 hours. Okay, then from about 79, there's a really steady but very quick growth till we hit the mid 80s, and we're suddenly sitting on 15,000 people that are running Comrades, 900 of which are getting silver medals, and the rest are getting bronze medals. No Bill Rowan's in those days. But who are we looking to for advice on how to run Comrades? We're looking at this 900 very fast athletes. So the people who've done 5, 4, 5, 6, 7 Comrades, they're all people who ran in the late 70s and early 80s, when hardly anybody ran the race, and they all tend to be extremely good runners. They are genetically better suited to running. They recover faster from their training efforts. And now these people are telling us we have to run 140 Ks a week, and that 4 weeks out from Comrades we must run a 65 kilometer long run. So the traditional distance of these long runs is between 60 and 64 kilometers, depending on which club it is that you belong to. And for 80% of the field, that is too far. Again, if we work on that 90-10% split, it's probably even better, but it is too far. So how long are we looking? For most of the field, we're looking between 50 and 55 kilometers. For your silver medalists and quicker, you probably are looking at 60, possibly 65 kilometers. Okay. Back to when? 5 weeks before is a great time to do this run. However, with the timing of 2 Oceans and Comrades this year, so I'm going to talk about 2 scenarios. One is the ideal scenario. Somebody who is only interested in running Comrades, To hell with whatever else is going on. That crowd of people, 5 weeks before, you are going to do between 50 and 55 kilometers as your long run before Comrades. Okay, it's much simpler for you. You don't have to think about too many complications. Then you get people who sorry, you get people who love Two Oceans too, and why wouldn't you? It's a great race. Or they are planning on only doing this for 1 year, so while they are getting fit enough to do Comrades, they might as well also do Two Oceans. Okay, so that means that 7 weeks before Comrades, you're going to be doing a 56-kilometer race. Okay, I'm not going to discourage anybody from doing that. I love Oceans. I think it's a fantastic race, but it does mean that we have to adjust what we're going to do for the long run and when we're going to do it. Because if you've been on these webinars before with Brad and I, you'll know that I am pretty strong on not not doing an ultra or a long run within 3 weeks of another one. So that means if you do Oceans, you are going to push that long run out to 4 weeks before. But importantly, that means that you need to shorten that long run. And so then my advice would be to do 2 Oceans, 7 weeks out, and then to do a marathon 4 weeks out. So then your last long run won't necessarily be a long run. That long run will effectively be replaced by 2 Oceans, but because it's too far out, you do then need to get in another decent length run, and that'll be a marathon to 45 Ks. Why do we do the long run? Okay, we had the question earlier, how will I know that I can do Comrades? One of the main things about the long run is not the physical conditioning that it gives you. You can get plenty good physical conditioning without doing such a long run. But it gives us a great psychological boost knowing that we can go that distance, that we can do the 56 Ks. And because we're doing it in normally a heavy week of training, so in other words, there's no taper for it, we're doing it on tired legs. And when we get to the end, because we run it slowly and we run it typically at close to, or we should be running it at close to Comrades pace, when you get to the end, you feel like, hey, I can actually do this because I know that today I could do at least another 10 Ks and I don't even have fresh legs. So the long run is a hugely psychological thing. And then the other thing that's very important for it, from my point of view, is that it is our final dress rehearsal. So it's that time that last chance to check the training kit that we're racing in, the shoes, the socks we're going to wear, the suntan lotion you're going to use, the lubricant you're going to use, the plasters, that you've sussed out where all the plasters should go, suntan lotion, your energy routine that you're going to be doing on race day. It is absolutely not a race or a time to prove to everybody how strong you are. It's time on your feet. It's about ticking all the last boxes to say, I have now prepared everything that's going to happen on race day to the absolute best of my ability.
I love it. Lindsay, lots of questions coming in around the sort of long run and pacing and that sort of thing. So I'm going to jump into those questions now because they've been coming through pretty much all night and I knew we were going to cover that. Warren wants to know, should you be doing your club long run and Oceans, for example, at similar pace to that plan for Comrades or slower than your Comrades pace?
No, so pretty close to Comrades pace, because as a general rule for the bulk of the field, you will be doing Comrades at significantly slower than you are accustomed to running at. If you're aiming for a Bill Rowan, for example, your marathon pace will be pretty close to 5 minutes per K, but your Comrades pace is about 6 minutes per K. So you would be running it at pretty close to Comrades pace, and it's actually a great time for people to try and get used to the pace that they will be running at Comrades, because that is one of the mistakes a lot of people make, is that they run a lot of their training quite a bit quicker than Comrades. Comrades Day comes, and then either you feel too uncomfortable to run in that pace and you end up running way too fast at Comrades because that feels much more comfortable to you, and then you end up completely burning out, or you run at that slower pace and it actually is just so uncomfortable and unnatural that you end up hurting something. So those are the sort of things that happen. So I would certainly use 3 or 4 opportunities through this training process to run at Comrades pace, walk at the run walk intervals that you're planning on using on race day.
Okay, Lindsay, you mentioned that your long run should be a dress rehearsal. I've got 2 questions then regarding shoes. And the first one, I'm trying to see who it was from. It came through from Rian. He wanted to know what's the ideal amount of kilometers your shoe should have in on race day. And Carl said he's got a new pair of shoes in his cupboard, but he's trying to save them for the race so he doesn't have too much mileage. He's currently in shoes that have done just shy of 1,100 Ks. Would about 400 Ks be okay to start in the new pair, the new shoes coming for Comrades?
Yeah. So for me, obviously, if you're in the fortunate position of being able to buy shoes whenever you need them, I would plan to buy a pair of shoes and run them in and have between 250 and 300 Ks in the pair of shoes that you're racing Comrades in, because that's when a shoe is still practically brand new, but you run in it long enough that your foot really has settled into the shoe quite nicely. But anything up to, in most pairs of shoes, provided you're not running in quite a minimalist shoe with very little cushioning, most shoes will still have plenty of cushioning for Comrades at about 600 Ks. So your window, I guess, is somewhere between 250 Ks and 500-600 kilometers. Look, at 1,100 Ks, I'd be looking at replacing those shoes ASAP. You are starting to risk hurting yourself by just carrying on running in that pair of shoes. So yeah, and the other shoes that you're saving for Comrades, you're looking at get them up to about 300 to 500 Ks before race day.
Cool. Another 2 questions, very similar for the long runs. One from Nikki Chamberlain. Nikki saying, for your weekly Sunday long run, is it better to do it hilly, which means covering less distance, or on normal terrain, which would enable covering more miles but not as hilly? Or is it better to alternate between those 2 sort of things weekly? And Mpo wanted to know, does the route profile for the long run matter? Does it matter if it's hilly or flat?
Yeah, so I would, on the long runs, do as many of them as possible on a hilly route profile. Having said that, you can get too much of it, and you do get different injuries. If you literally only run uphills and downhills, you do predispose yourself to different types of injuries like ITB or glute, lower calf strains. So I would say that in a month, you've typically got 3 long runs and a recovery run in a month. So I'd say at least 2 of those I would do on quite tough hilly routes, and then the last one in the recovery week I would try and avoid doing hills altogether.
2 questions about splitting runs, Lindsay. One is about splitting your midweek runs. So if you've, someone was saying that obviously sun's rising and setting a little bit later, so to get a long run in midweek's becoming quite tough in South Africa. Can they split, do half of it in the morning, half of it in the afternoon? And someone else asking, your back-to-back Saturday and Sunday long runs, is it possible, if you've got time, to move one of those midweek so you're not doing them back-to-back?
Yeah, so you can definitely split your long runs up. Invariably, it gives you very similar physiological benefit. Obviously, it doesn't give you quite the same joint and tendon and muscle loading, but you've got that on the weekend. So that's not critical. So the long run in the middle of the week, for sure, you can split that up into 2 weeks. And for the back-to-backs, Yes, the answer again is yes. The main reason how those hard back-to-backs came into being was that when I first became Comrades coach 10 years ago, one of the pushes was to get people to look at the training program and go, okay, I have got enough time to train for Comrades, because a lot of people were not interested in taking on Comrades because of the pure time commitment to it. And so when we looked at it, we were like, okay, a lot of people do have time on the weekends, so let's load the weekends, and then in the week we'll make it a lot easier for people to train. Loads of people then sent messages say, you know, this long run on a Sunday on tired legs has made an enormous difference to their ability to finish Comrades and to do well at Comrades. So it didn't come about as designed to be the ideal way of running, but it did. A lot of people experienced it to have made a big difference and to have improved their running. That said, I've got no problem with doing a long run midweek and then doing a shorter run on the weekend with another long run. In terms of your total program and mileage, that should still give you the desired results at the end of the day.
Cool. Lindsay, question in from Kim, who is coming into South Africa as an international runner, and I think this is something most of the international runners who are coming struggle with, training with the nutrition products that are offered on the course. She's saying it's hard, often impossible for international runners where the products aren't available. What do people normally do? It's an interesting one, and what advice would you give to international runners? I mean, a lot of the stuff is generic. I mean, Energade is pretty much like Gatorade generally, but as far as the rest of the stuff, I mean, there's not too many things out of the ordinary that you would get on race day that you couldn't possibly get internationally.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I have raced internationally and used Gatorade, and it is different in terms of the fact that it tastes a little bit differently. I find Gatorade to be a little more acidic, and Energade to be to taste a lot sweeter, but they've got similar amounts of sugar. They provide similar types of sugar, so I don't expect them to cause irritation of the stomach or anything like that. And then of course Coca-Cola is a product you can pretty much get anywhere in the world. So, you know, there will be Coke and then later on cream soda. I'm not sure if that's a product you can get anywhere in the world. But yeah, you've got Coke all the way through, and so that is something that you can then, wherever you are in the world, you know, practice running on and using Coca-Cola. And then also, you know, if you're not coming on your own and you are going to have supporters, there will be opportunities on the route where your supporters can get to you and get you stuff. You know, coming from overseas, they won't be as familiar, and we're not talking about, you know, getting to 5 or 6 places along the route, but it's probably quite easy for most people to get to 2 places along the route. So you can get some top-ups of nutrition, like if you use a specific gel that you can't get in South Africa, for example, and they'd be able to give that to you so that you don't have to carry it along. And then, you know, even locally in South Africa, there are a lot of people that use products that they feel are not, because they don't like the Coke and Energade, and they will run with, like, you know, a moon bag, you know, a fanny pack, I think they're called in the US, where they will stuff like hordes of gels and chews and gum shots and whatever else it is that they are going to use. So there are ways of carrying some of the stuff. There are ways of getting some of the stuff to you on the route. But yeah, the Energade is essentially quite a sweet cordial. I mean, that's really what it tastes like. It's really not that different to Gatorade. And then Coke, you obviously get pretty much everywhere in the world.
Yeah, there's also an opportunity for, and the South African runners can use this too, but the South African runners, obviously with running clubs, have got they've got access to facilities like this. But I think it's an organization called Complete Marathon. I know Bruce Fordyce is involved with them. They offer, like you would at an Ironman, essentially a special needs facility. So you can drop off stuff with them, and I think they're in the foyer of the Hilton. in the build-up to race day. So for the 3 days in the expo, that's where they'll be, and you can drop off the stuff that you want, and they'll then take it to various spots along the route. I think they have 2, they may have 3 spots along the route where you can then pick things up. So if there's specific bars or gels that you use that you're not sure if you can get here in South Africa that you'd like to bring with, you can check that out. So if you'd like, you can pop me an email. I will get those details for you. Anybody who wants to know about them, I'll forward those details on to you. I can't think of them offhand right now. Lindsay, a couple of questions coming in about Loscorp. You mentioned Oceans and how far that is out from Comrades. The Loscorp Ultramarathon is taking place on the 22nd of April. How does that fit into the plan of the long run, as you were talking about, not too far out from Comrades?
Look, that's a week after 2 Oceans. So if you're running Oceans, then Loscorp doesn't fit at all into any plan that I would write. But if you're not doing 2 Oceans, then Loscorp would be fine. It's 6 weeks out, so it's only a week out from ideal, but I certainly wouldn't be squeezing in another long run after Loscorp. So then I would be making Loscorp my long run, and then probably 2 weeks later, when the guys doing Oceans are doing their last marathon, I would look at doing 30 to 36K, but Loscorp would become my long run, Comrades long run.
All right, cool stuff. Just once again, a massive thank you to Bonitas. Lots of questions coming through. We'll get to a few more of them in just a moment, but I just wanted to share a couple of resources with you, because we obviously, with the amount of people that are on here today, we're not going to get to all the questions, but there are tons of resources online, and I just want to put a bit of a disclaimer and a warning out as well. There's a lot of Comrades info available online. Obviously, Lindsay writes the programs that are on the Comrades website, and people tend to pick and choose the advice that they want, particularly around the long runs. And I know Lindsay said that he needs to, as coach, sort of set his stall out. And I see it so often as well, that people pick and choose the bits of advice they want to hear, and then they wonder why it doesn't work on race day. So if I could give you one bit of advice, is find one person that you can sell out to. I'd bet on Lindsay. He's got a great track record, but then follow that program to the T. If you've got any questions, come back to Lindsay. Don't be following somebody else's program and try and fit Lindsay's long-run strategies into somebody else's program. So that's just my advice, or vice versa. But as far as resources go, comrades.com has got a lot of resources on. You can also get to coachparry.com. That's Lindsay's website. There are tons of resources on there. I've seen a lot of questions coming through today that if we haven't answered your question, first port of call after this webinar is go to coachparry.com, and in the search bar, just type your question in, because I've seen lots of questions that we haven't answered, but we have answered on podcasts before. So those are on the website. Just go and search for it. There's also Bonitas Novice Project seminars that are underway as we speak. The next one's happening tomorrow night. If you are in the Johannesburg area, it's at Megawatt Park. All the details are on comrades.com. On Thursday nights, they're going to be out in the Oosrand in Benoni, I believe. Lindsay, is that correct?
Sorry, say that again.
The Novice Project on Thursday, it's in Benoni?
On Wednesday, yes. So Tuesday,
Megawatt Park. My bad, I've lost today. Tuesday, Megawatt Park in Sunninghill. Wednesday is Benoni on the East Rand, and then next week they're going to be in Pretoria and then in Durban as well. So it doesn't matter where you are in the country, you get to one of those Novice Project seminars. They're definitely worth going to. I went to the one in Cape Town last week. As far as training programs, there are training programs available, generic ones for the different medals on comrades.com/marathon center/training. Go get that training program, follow it to the T, and I'm pretty sure you'll get your medal. Those are generic programs. Obviously, races and fitting in different races, you need to sort of figure out there. If you're looking for individualized programs, if you're looking for someone to tailor-make a program specifically to the races that you're training for, you can get specific running coaching packages on the coachparry.com. It's coachparry.com/running-coaching-packages. There are monthly packages. There's also once-off packages. So go check that out. And if you want to connect with Lindsay, there's a private Facebook group that we've set up all you have to do is head over to coachbarry.com/Facebook. That'll redirect you to that group. Get in there and ask your questions. I've seen there's a big Comrades Facebook group, and gee, the amount of conflicting information on there is ridiculous. So if you want to get to chat to Lindsay, that's the Facebook group to get to. And the Ask Coach Parry podcast, which I've mentioned already, just go to askcoachparry.com. The next webinar is happening on the 24th of April, which is a Monday, and then we're going to be doing another one 2 weeks out from Comrades Race Day as well. So there's 2 more left in this series. We're going to be looking at that final month in the next month's one, and then the 2 weeks before we'll be talking about race day itself and how to tackle Comrades race day and how to get through it and make sure that you do get the medal that you're going for. So Lindsay, I know we said we were going to be done at 9, but there's still tons of questions coming in. Can we nick you for a few more minutes if that's pretty good?
Yeah, let's do a couple more minutes, and then I have to de-screen time myself and get good quality sleep.
No
stress. Yeah. No, just kidding. Let's do another 10 or so minutes.
Perfect. All right, Lindsay, question in from Alex saying he's finding that with hilly runs he's getting a sore Achilles tendon. How does he get his Achilles used to this for the up run?
Look, unfortunately, there's no really getting the Achilles tendon used to it. We do have to remove the stressor and allow the Achilles to heal itself and then come back at it. So there are a couple of things you can do to reduce the stress on the Achilles. One of those is to just get like a high density foam and build yourself up a very small heel wedge that will just take the pressure off the Achilles in the short term. You can then do some calf raises, both with a straight knee, which will strengthen your gastroc, and then with a bent knee, which will strengthen your soleus, which is usually the culprit when the Achilles is getting irritated and sore. So I do a little bit of strengthening there. Unfortunately, you typically have to wait until that pain settles a bit before you do those strengthening exercises. But one way to cheat it is to not do it on a step. Like people typically strengthen calves by doing the exercise on a step and then going below the horizontal. So if you do it on flat ground so that your heel is going from the horizontal and then pushing up, that would be one way is just to strengthen that soleus and the calf a bit, and then to do some very gentle calf stretches again with a straight and a bent knee, not stretching into pain. So if you feel a similar pain, particularly to what you are on running, then you don't want to stretch any further. You can get like a foam roller, but I find a foam roller is not great on the calves because you can't really get enough pressure on it. So what I have found to be quite useful is if you get like a pastry roller. You get those ones that have got the loose handles, and you really roll that pastry. You use that pastry roller to really roll into the soleus and the gastroc. That will help to loosen that muscle and then hopefully take some of the pressure off the Achilles. But in the short term, it sounds like it's just the hilly runs that are aggravating it for now. So in the short term, I would remove the hills, get some treatment and a physio, or follow some of the suggestions I've just given you now, and then in a week or two you can go back to running on the hilly routes. And my wife tells me that it's called a rolling pin.
Yeah, I was going to say, just to make sure you're not using cutters, because you don't want your calves to look like Christmas cookies. So make sure it is the rolling pin, just so you know. Stephanie saying, I'm a Comrades novice. I've had 2 good months of training in January and February. In March, hasn't gone that well. Got shin splints and flu. Only done 1 marathon in Feb. Do I still have enough time to get back on track? Lindsay, here's a prime example, as you were talking about, if you are injured or sick, is sorted out now. Don't try and train through it.
Yeah, so I mean, it sounds like the shin splints have been a problem through most of March. So hopefully you are sorting it out and that it's getting near the end. Although again, if you've been slogging through the training, you've been delaying the healing and probably haven't been able to get the quality in that you would have liked. As you've just said, you haven't been able to do much in the way of long runs. So get healthy, get rid of the shin splints, and then you've still got time. We've got 6 weeks, and 6 good weeks can really move your fitness forward a long way. But the most important thing is that you get yourself to a point of healthy and injury-free.
All right, question from Tepatosh saying, will my feet swell at Comrades? I think everything swells at Comrades, at least it does for me.
Yes.
All right, cool. Let me do one more question for you. Lindsay, is it okay to do a stretching session the day before a long marathon or 2 Oceans or Comrades?
Look, I'm not big on stretching sessions per se. So, you know, I do encourage the athletes that I work with to stretch after exercise. So every time you have run, I tell people never to stretch a cold muscle. So I guess the day before those races, if you went for 10 minutes, nice cool jog, you could do a decent stretch, particularly if you've traveled a long way and been shut up in a small car or whatever along the way. But again, I don't really like to do things completely out of the ordinary. So if that is something that you'd like to incorporate, then I would be doing that kind of thing now. You know, get your body used to that stretching now, so that you don't just suddenly do a big stretching session just before your main race.
Cool. Lindsay, just last one, and it's probably going to be a long one. If we haven't got your question tonight, apologies. Get into that Facebook group. It's coachperry.com/Facebook. Unfortunately, with the amount of people that are on these things, we can't get to everyone's questions. But someone was asking, a few people were asking, you ran through the average pace for the finisher medal for Comrades. Can you do the average pace for all the medals? So for silver, bull rowan, and for bronze, what's the average pace come Comrades race day if you're aiming for those medals?
I can, if you just give me a second to find it on my computer, because I did all those calculations last week. Then it'll save me having to do all the maths while I'm talking to you. There we go. And paces. Come on.
Okay, while Lindsay's looking for that, just a quick one as well. The replay of this webinar will be up online. I will try and get it up tonight. If not, it'll be first thing tomorrow morning. And yeah, feel free to go through it again if you've missed anything with these pacing sort of averages and long runs and exactly how many kilometers you should be doing. We've covered that all tonight, so it'll be available as the replay.
Cool. So for your silver medal, you're looking at an average of 5 minutes and 11 seconds per kilometer. For bull rowan, you're looking at 6 minutes and 13 seconds per kilometer. And for a bronze medal, you're looking at 7 minutes and 36 seconds per kilometer. So look, for all of the medals, even silver, there is going to be some walking involved. Silver possibly not quite as much as the others. So for a silver medal, I reckon you're looking, when you're running, you should be running at least at about 5:07, 5:08. For the bull rowan, you're probably running at about 6:03 to 6:05 per K. And your bronze, you're probably running at about 7:20 to 7:25 per K. And obviously, as we move further and further back, we're losing more time as we cross the start line, and also that there's probably also going to be a bit more walking, hence the relatively faster time while running. But yeah, those are your averages that you'll be needing for the race.
Awesome stuff. Well, Lindsay, a couple of people disappointed. You didn't mention pot plants this evening, but they are quite chuffed that you gave us a lesson on pastry rollers, which is fantastic. And I'm disappointed that Danny Suskin didn't have to jump in and translate for us. So we obviously, for the international runners, had things sorted. We are learning. So thank you very much. Lindsay, parting words from you, and then I'll wrap things up, and then we are out of here.
Yeah, look, guys, it really is crunch time. You know, my training partner, one of his favorite sayings is it's never too early to panic, and it certainly is getting to that point now where I think you can feel Comrades is right there, and you probably are panicking that there's not a lot of time left, but I promise you that in 6 weeks you can make a huge difference to your fitness. And so if you just stick to the game plan and you listen to your body, so in other words, we do as much training as we can, but we let our body guide us when we are starting to get too close to the edge, then you can make a very big difference between now and when the taper starts to get yourself ready for this race.
Absolutely. Lindsay Parry, the official Comrades Marathon coach, thanks for your time. Make sure you get into that Facebook group. You can get your questions answered there. From myself, Brad Brown, thank you for joining us. We'll catch up in the next webinar at the end of April. Looking forward to that. Thanks for your time tonight. Best of luck with the training. If you are going to be at the Old Minstrel Two Oceans, we'll see you there. And have yourself an awesome April. Hopefully you get the miles in you want and stay injury-free and healthy. And we'll see you in a month from now. Thanks for your time tonight.